Shut up and sit down.
Hi everybody, welcome to the FTSQ podcast where we celebrate non-conformists. Today we have a very interesting guest. We have Dada Jyotirupananda. Please tell me I got that correct. Dada is somebody that I was introduced to by our mutual dear friend, Dr. Renee Tonkin. She introduced us a couple of months ago, and I ended up doing a photo shoot with Dada. But Dada is a yogic monk. He has had many decades practicing meditation and doing a unusual yogic vegetarian vegan diet. You've practiced in quite a few different countries, some of which have been quite religiously dogmatic, I understand, before coming to Europe. And I think about 30 countries I saw in your biography. And the areas that you work in or services that you work in is meditation classes, professional speaking. I read in it somewhere that you've done Glastonbury healing field, which is quite timely considering a few years ago, I understand, but just recently Glastonbury's just happened. You're a published author. You have a book which I've read, which is amazing, which is called Meditation Searching for the Real You. What I found with it was actually how practical it was. Although it talks about spirituality and that kind of thing, I also loved how much it talked about practical things that you can do in your life, and I really enjoyed that. You've also consulted with UK government on issues about religion and public affairs. So you've had a bit of an interesting life. So I'm really looking forward to this conversation. I think what really also kicks this off nicely is kind of anybody that is a non-conformist. You think they've always been like that, but you grew up Jewish in the Bible Belt of the Midwest of the USA, so as probably as conformist as you can in the USA, and most of your friends were practicing Catholics. So I'm looking forward to the conversation we're going to have about your beginning and how you got from there to where you are today. But one of the things that jumped out to me before I jump into the first question, is you talk about not your non-conformity not always being a conscious choice. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to jump into the first question I usually ask, which is about what does non-conformity mean to you, Dada?
Yeah. What does non-conformity mean to me? Well, it's not something obvious like if I was the best marathon runner in the world or the best guitarist in the world, however you measure those, that would be something you can measure. Dada can run the marathon in so much. He's played with all the great musicians. Those are not what I do at all. Although, as I'm saying, those are obvious things. I suspect, I can't speak for other people, but I suspect that someone who would be identified as a nonconformist would be identified by other people, but he or she may not think of themselves, I'm a nonconformist. Now, I do think of myself as a yogic monk, and that is pretty unusual. Rarely do I walk down the street here in London and meet someone else who's doing what I do, dressed similar to what I am, except Sikh men will, of course, be dressed with the turban. And sometimes they'll stop and look at me because they know I'm not Sikh from the way I'm dressed and all, but they wonder, why is he wearing what I wear? Yeah. So what does nonconformity mean to me? To me, it means that I have taken some steps toward doing in life what I feel is the best thing I can do in life. And I wish that everyone could do what they feel is the most valuable thing they can do, the best thing they can do, that can be good for the world. I don't mean the best bank robber or the best murderer or anything like that, but yeah, I certainly don't mean that. But I think each of us has some quality or qualities that we can, if we could use them, we could help the world. We could make ourselves feel good and our family, hopefully, but also we could do something meaningful for the world. Being a podcaster would be something meaningful for the world. Being a healer, an artist, many, many other things can be good for the world if we only have the way to do that thing that is our best thing. And it's different for everyone.
I think that's a really interesting point. And I think what's going to continue to come out now that we're relaunching the podcast
Yeah.
um, is that non-conformity means different things to different people. And I think that's a beautiful thing. I think the whole point of non-conformity is not fitting somebody into a box, which is why it's such an interesting question, I think.
Hmm. Yeah.
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 So, okay, well, that's probably one of the most interesting definitions of nonconformity I've had, which I
Yeah.
really enjoy. So, let's jump into the bit that's going to probably take up the most time, which is your life story. Sort of tell us about your sort of upbringing, education, your sort of family life, everything that's kind of taken you to where you are, ending up on a podcast talking to a Kiwi about nonconformity. How did it
Um,
start?
well, again, a little bit like what I just said is it's not a life choice in the sense of I'm going to plan to do this. I had a friend in university, his name is Nelson, just for reference, who from our first year, the very beginning, he was planning out his whole life. He would take this degree, study this, then he would get a job in this way, and then he would do this and this and this. Now, I lost contact with him. I doubt if he did exactly what he wanted, but he had planned that. Hopefully, given that the things I recall were good things to do, that he had planned, hopefully he did that. But I certainly didn't do that. Uh, with my family, the jobs that my uncles had, my mother and aunties, they, after the kids were raised, they, again, most of them started working. But in those days, a long time ago in the States, and I think many countries, what's the old saying? A woman's place is in the home. Is that what we hear? Uh,
Back in the olden days, yep.
yeah, yeah. And so I recall the qualities that my female relatives had, and some of them had fantastic qualities, great intellect, but your place is in the home. So I
Mm,
feel not only with my family, but with countless women around the world, US, any country, uh, we have lost a lot of possibilities for making the world a better place because many women are shunted to the side. Nowadays, and even in those days, I think a good number of women are able to, and some of them were able to, but nowadays they are able to express their finer qualities. And maybe we'll get to that a little later. But as far as my life, as you've indicated, I grew up in many ways, in a normal neighborhood, normal family. My friends, when you said about my best friends being Catholic, that was when I was growing up until, say, secondary school, what in America we call high school. At that point, I started going to a bigger school, and my friends were from every sort of background. Given that in Indianapolis in that era, in the 60s, 70s, whatever, every sort of background probably didn't include Muslims, Buddhists, Indians, Asians of any sort, whatever. There were a few. I happen to know there were a few Chinese people in my hometown, but very few, and I have no idea where they lived. They weren't in a ghetto or anything like that, but we never saw them. Same with Muslims. I don't know if there were any Muslims in Indianapolis at that time. Again, probably there were some, but very few. So my background, to some degree, was normal, and the parts that weren't normal, I struggled to try to make them normal. Um, Being Jewish, of course, was in a sense a big thing. In one sense, it wasn't. Like, I was in school in our classrooms. Rarely did we talk about religion, but it does come to mind that in those days, still, school prayer was pretty much the standard in the public schools.
mm.
And at the beginning of the school day, maybe, I guess in the beginning, the teacher would take the roll to make sure we're all there. And then we'd stand up, probably in a circle, maybe at our desks. And the standard prayer was said. I can remember part of it still. I think it was Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name, et cetera, et cetera.
I
And
will be one, etc.
yeah,
Yep.
and I was, there may have been one, maybe two other Jewish kids in our class of 30 or 40 kids. And I always felt, wow, this is strange. But there was no option in those days. It wasn't
Mm.
like the teacher was looking at you and saying you have to do it, but just the custom, you did it. So that was a strange feeling. On the other hand, uh, going to religious school, what we called Sunday school, which is something that Jewish kids didn't, I guess kids from other religions, I was told then and other times that we are the chosen people.
Right.
And that was just given as a fact, just like the fact is the walls are blue color, or the ceiling has a light bulb in it, or the chairs are made of wood. It was just another fact, like the things I'm just mentioning. But I always felt funny about that. Not, oh, that's strange, but rather uh, uh, there wasn't a lot of proof in recent human history about that. There's a thing called the Holocaust, which we've heard about, and that certainly didn't suggest that we were chosen people. And my
Mm.
family and most of the other families I knew that were Jewish, we had just regular jobs. My dad was a salesman. Uh, uh, Others may have, yeah, just had whatever jobs like that. Um, so I wondered, how can that be that we're the chosen people? Now, thinking logically, looking back from many years later, it's a pitch.
Yeah.
Um, and one, I suppose people have to feel good about themselves in one way or another. People meaning a group of people, whether it's religious, racial, gender, ethnic, national, language, whatever it is. People want to feel that what they're doing is right and the best thing, and they're in the best place they can be.
And approved, probably.
Yeah,
Approved, you know?
yeah.
So how did you so it does sound like a, everything I've ever watched on American television of the
Hmm.
sort of that part of the world that seems pretty normal, or, whatever you wanna call normal. How did you get from that life
Yeah.
to being involved in, meditation
Hmm.
and yoga? Sort of
Hmm.
at which point did it start to move in a different direction?
Okay. Well, let me partly what I'm saying about the chosen people, it felt odd, but if I can continue with that for a second.
Yeah, of
But
course.
years later, I realized that I had somehow gotten in my blood, in my bones, something like, we are better. I am better.
Right.
But this became confusing because I certainly wasn't a great athlete. In school, I was maybe a bit above average student, but not a great student. I had friends, but I wasn't more popular than anyone else. um, uh, Other abilities I had, virtually any ability I had was probably not much better than average for any other kids my age. And at a young age, you do relate yourself to your peers, to your fellow students, your classmates, your
Yeah,
friends at
in the
home.
line. Mm.
Yeah, and generally you do want to fit in. So I never felt that I was completely outside of everyone else, but I never felt I was quite in the same group, partly religion, partly just the way I was. But then in university, I started out my first year making friends, doing things that other kids did, and trying to be a good student, trying to find courses that seemed interesting and useful for me. And then we all went away for the summer. I went to Indianapolis. This friend went here, and that friend went there, etc. And in the second year, I re-met one of my friends, a fellow named Kaylor, Caylor. That was his middle name, but he preferred that. His first name was Truman, also not a very common name, but he preferred Kaylor, which was, I think, from his mother's family. Um, and The first time I met Kaylor actually was unknowingly to me at the time a sign of where I would go. I had a roommate named Richard in school, in university. We lived in what we call the dorms. In England, they call it the halls. And Richard was from another town. And one day he was out, and there was a knock on the door. Hello, come in. And it was a fellow who introduced himself as Kaylor, and looking for Richard because they'd been friends in high school, and now they were in university. So naturally, they wanted to reconnect. And when he walked in, it felt like I knew him. Now, I couldn't have known him. I had never seen him before. I had a very good memory. I'd never been to his hometown, Fort Wayne. Whether he'd been to Indianapolis, I don't know. But certainly we had never met. But something felt, I know him. Something felt familiar about him. Anyway, that feeling passed. We talked a little bit, and I told him Richard was out, and we chatted about who we were, what we were wanted to study, etc. And I got to know him more over the year. Uh, he was a bit different than the others in the sense of he had a certain awareness or sensitivity I felt that others didn't have, as well as having done things that most people hadn't done. But when we came back after the summer break, I looked him up. I found out where he was staying that year, and I walked into his room, and something felt different. There was a calmness, a quietness that I didn't feel in among any other students. And I found out that over the summer he had learned something called yoga. What's that? It just, the word was completely new to me. The core of it, of course, was meditation. And he had learned how to do some simple meditation practice from, oddly enough, from the father of a friend of his who was a psychiatrist. And he started telling me about it, and he showed me some books he was reading and had read. And all of a sudden, without the words coming into my mind, but all of a sudden I felt something new is coming into my life. Something unusual, something different, something possible, or something with great possibilities was coming into my life. And gradually over the year, I learned more about these things from him. He tried to show me some yoga exercises like a headstand, which I could not possibly do. But then as he started talking more about the meditative aspect of it, I felt, yes, maybe this will help me to get past a lot of my difficulties, hang-ups, my worries, my neuroses. My mind was always moving rapidly all the time, my emotions, my thoughts going everywhere with no steadiness, no quietness.
I think a lot of people, particularly in today's day and age with media and social
Mhm.
media and digital stuff, they can really, I mean, I definitely know that feeling of the too many things in my head
Mhm.
and rushing and
Yeah,
just all over the place. I think
yeah.
there's a lot of people that will be listening to this will definitely
Mhm.
recognize those feelings for
Mhm.
sure.
Yeah, well, definitely. I guess at that age, I knew I wasn't unusual in that way. Just the mind moving all the time, and the emotions going up and down, in and out, so to speak, all the time. But talking to Kaler, seeing even just with a few weeks or months of meditation, he was feeling more steady, more calm. A way that on the surface, I couldn't read his mind, but on the surface, what I saw, and also from talking with him, I felt this is where I want to go to. I want to go there. I want to be something like that. So I started reading more about meditation, and in the Midwest U.S., a little bit further behind the rest of the U.S. in new things. Still, gradually, it was starting to become something uh, doable, something accessible to people. Meditation, yoga. And I do remember, as I say in some of my talks and classes, the first experience I had with anything like this. And I don't know if I learned this from Kaler, but I'd heard about an exercise where you sit in a quiet place, maybe in a dark room, light a candle, sit in front of that candle. Hopefully no one is around. And then as you stare moment after moment, minute after minute at the candle, you can start to remember things from past lives or from other parts of your life. You can start to get a deeper sense of who you are like that. And it seemed really exciting. So one evening, my roommate, a fellow named Jim, was out of the room. I knew he was out for the evening. I locked the door so none of my other friends would just come and knock and come on in. It was getting dark, and it was quiet. So I got a candle in a tray or whatever, as the article had said, which I had read, and I lit the candle. And I was looking forward. I just started staring at the candle, expecting that, these things would happen after some minutes. And so as I said, I lit the candle, and for about that long, I could stare at the candle. Then maybe it might even maximum 10 seconds, whatever. Too much. I just couldn't do it. It blew out the candle. I got my jacket on, went outside looking for friends just to do something.
Why was it too much, do you think?
Why was it too much?
Yeah.
Probably because my mind wasn't used to being focused on one thing, which was it was a material thing, the flame of the candle. It wasn't like I'm having to sit and think about some sublime idea, but
Yeah.
still, it was just unusual. And sitting there with no interaction, no talking, no writing, no reading, no listening to music, not eating or drinking anything, it was just too much for me at that point.
I find that
It wasn't because I was being judged by anyone,
yeah,
because no one else was there. No one knew I was doing
yeah.
it, but I just wasn't used to that stillness. Yeah,
I find that a really interesting, and actually, it was one of the things that right at the beginning of starting
mm,
reading your book, it really hit me that, and it made me go because I've struggled with the concept of I've tried to do meditation so many
mhm,
times and not really necessarily understanding how I should be doing, except for things people tell you and what have
sure.
you. And I'm exactly, I understand that feeling exactly
Mhm,
because every single time I've sat down to try doing it and have some stillness and quiet, my ideas and thoughts in my head just race even faster.
yeah,
So I
yeah.
find it quite interesting that that's kind of. So how did you get to to get over that then, or did you try a different way or something?
Well, I think I never tried the candle exercise again. Now that you bring it up,
Love it.
I wasn't allergic to it, but it just I felt well, it probably won't work. But gradually, I started going to some classes, and some of them were yoga classes, which were great. The physical exercise, the physical movements, and this itself was a bit relaxing. Um, Certainly, exercises like in the gym classes, physical education classes, those would not be calming and peaceful. But yoga classes were different. There might be some
Mm.
quiet music in the background. Perhaps the teacher had lit some incense, so the aroma in the room, the scent was quite nice and calming. And the exercises themselves were, yeah, fairly calming. Um, but then with meditation, I would start to go to some lectures, some classes about that. And they would give us some ideas like, close your eyes and observe your breathing, things that I do in my classes also. Or maybe they would give you some thoughts to go around in your mind, some, as I would say, mental exercises. And these things could help me to feel a little more calm, little better, a little more, yeah, more calm than I had been, less chatter in my mind. Um, so these things made me feel that yes, maybe meditation, if I really take it up as a regular habit, maybe I can do it. Probably I was still feeling wary after the candle exercise, which, as I just described, didn't give me any hope that I could just sit calmly, quietly with my eyes closed. Yeah. But as I would go to some classes and read more books, and one or another friend would take up some formal meditation practice from this or that teacher, and I could see, as I did with Kaler, that yes, the person seems to be a bit more calm, not just racing around all the time, either verbally, mentally, or physically. Yeah. So gradually, I felt that yes, maybe meditation is something I can really do it, not just read about it. Yeah.
You mentioned there about the physical side of things, and
Mhm.
one of the things that you, in fact, you posted about it this week on social media about the mind body connection, and it does come out in your book as well. I think. So I'm just going to pick up where that came from. I think there was a section about the links between our bodies and mind. There's a whole section about the physical body gateway to the mind and soul. And I think in modern medicine, for example, they separate mental wellness
Mhm.
and physical wellness so differently. And yet our body is a whole thing,
Yeah.
isn't it? So
Yeah.
tell me more about how the physical and mental bit kind of works, or how you discovered that bit beyond the classes.
Yeah. Good question. It's something that I observe and feel in myself and others, but in a way, it's so natural that I don't always go about explaining it. So you're asking about the relation between the body and mind. Uh,
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's something I don't think modern people think enough about, and I don't think we understand the impact of mind on physical and physical on mind, because it goes both ways, doesn't
Mhm.
it?
Well, oddly enough, or coincidentally, next week I'm doing a small video encouraged or suggested by Dr. Tonkin, our good friend, um, about the relation between foods and meditation, what foods are
Oh,
good for meditation.
interesting.
And I think many people don't realize that the food you eat or what you drink, um, it does have an effect on your mind as well as your body, and
Mm.
it can make you feel more calm or more uh, hyper hyperactive or whatever. In some ways it's good. We need energy, and certain foods do give us physical energy. But some foods that we might eat might make our mind feel kind of dull and dry, whatever. And other foods, as I'm saying, make us feel very hyperactive. For example, white sugar. I remember many, many years ago when I was still living in the States, I went out for the afternoon with a friend of mine and the son of his girlfriend, who was about probably 6 or 7 years old. And we had a nice day, museums, parks, lunch, etc. And on the way back, we happened to pass a regular ice cream place. And Mark and I, the man, we looked at each other, and the boy, he looked at the ice cream place, and we thought, oh, well. So we went and got him a scoop of ice cream. And after eating just a couple of bites of the ice cream, he became like a monster, not literally, but just crying and angry and
Mm.
upset and moody and everything. Uh, and that's just one of many examples of how food can have a negative impact on us. So and that's an example of how the body and the mind are intertwined. Like with meditation, if I'm too tired, I might sit for my meditation, and if you see how my
Right.
body is,
Yeah.
because I'm just too tired to do meditation. And if someone is uh, maybe they've eaten too much food or they've eaten a good meal and then they try to do meditation, again, the mind may not be able to focus very well on the meditation because all of your energy is going into digesting the food. And the brain is perhaps not having the focus and the calmness that it needs because it is, in a way, it's tired also.
And
Uh,
busy, probably.
Sorry.
And it's busy. The body is busy at that point if you've eaten.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure. And uh, yeah, and if you're around too much noise, it may be hard to concentrate on meditation because the ears are being filled up with a lot of, shall I say, distractions that make it hard to focus on the meditative practice. Yeah,
Interesting.
these are
So
some ideas. Yeah.
it is.
Also, if you're in too much pain from illness or injury, whatever, that can make it hard to concentrate on meditation. But you were
And
saying
that
something, Lena?
no, that makes total sense. So at this point, you're taking yoga classes. You're starting
Mhm,
to make a connection for yourself about how good
mhm.
this practice of meditation
Yeah.
is. What happens next? How do you sort of go from that to, and there may be other steps in between that I'm
Mhm.
missing, but how do you do sort of this practicing to becoming a full yogic monk? How does that
Well,
journey happen?
okay. The first part though is getting into doing a regular meditation practice. Before that, and at that point in my life in uni, I was probably more or less 19 years old, and as I say, 19 to 20 years old, and um, as I say, a few of my friends were getting into meditation. I would read about it, and even I might have had some classes on dealing with these things. In fact, the brother of the Dalai Lama was a professor at my university,
Oh,
which is
cool.
quite rare.
Pretty
uh,
amazing.
yeah. Um, but so, and I would take some classes about Hindu or Tibetan, type of practices. And I could talk at that time in my life, I could talk a lot about it, but I had no experience in really practicing meditation. And there weren't many options also in my small town, although it was a university town, it was a small Midwestern town in the US. And as I was suggesting earlier, we just weren't with, Los Angeles or New York or places like that as far as having all the possibilities of either meditation or anything else. Um, but one day I was sitting in the cafeteria with a friend of mine named Gus, And he had started meditation sometime before, and he knew I wanted it, but he knew I'd never done it. And at one point, we're reading our books and sipping on our coffee and whatever else, and he happened to say to me, just in a very casual way, he said, there's a meditation course starting next week with this particular type of meditation. And he said to me, if you start it now, the school year was coming to an end, I might add. He said, if you start it now, you'll have all summer to just practice the meditation without having to do a lot of other things. And if he had said that maybe a week before, a couple weeks earlier, whatever, I would say, oh yeah. But something clicked. And I thought, yeah, I can do meditation also. So I took this introductory course before taking the formal meditation initiation with this group. And I realized that somehow I realized that, yes, I too can do meditation. Not just Gus and my other friends and people I'd be reading about in the newspapers, books, etc. But I felt, yes, I too can do it. And so I took the proper, as they would call it, initiation from this teacher, from this group. And I started doing my meditation. And instead of being a person, as I had been, who said, yes, I'll do it, but I never did it, or yes, I'll try it, but I never tried it, whether meditation or anything else, I started the meditation. They say do it twice a day, as many meditation teachers do. And I started doing it twice a day. And some of my bad habits just disappeared like that. Others would take more time. But it just changed my life overnight, literally.
Wow.
And so I kept up the meditation for many years through doing many activities in my life. And after some time, I found the group that I work with now, Ananda Marga, which I mention in the book and on my website in my classes and all. And
We'll put a link into the
okay,
show
great,
notes.
yeah. And I felt that these people were quite different than other meditation groups, partly because of the not just the meditation practice, which I personally found was quite deep compared to other things I tried, but also they were quite involved with helping the world, not necessarily related to meditation. Well, of course, they would some of the people I knew taught meditation at prisons, which is quite good, or they just did other sorts of social service, helping poor people, hungry people, lonely people, etc. And I thought, wow, that seems good. So I started getting involved with these people, and after some years, I'd had regular jobs, and I worked as a volunteer with Ananda Marga at different times, as well as the kind of normal jobs I would have. And at some point, I realized, well, I was getting in my late 20s, then all later even, and I realized, that people should do what they need, what they feel is the best thing to do in their life, not only for them, but for the world. And I realized that I did have this option to be a yogic monk in the Ananda Marga system. And I felt, well, take it up, and then I'll be able to really do something satisfying. By that time, meditation had really become the central part of my life every day, and the meditation lifestyle also. And I felt, why can't I share that or other things with other people and help everyone to, or help other people to do the best they can in their life? And so that's kind of how I did this. Yeah. Now, how I ended up being a yogic monk. Yeah.
Hey there.
That's a
Oh,
short story.
something happened there. That's all right. We'll edit that out. Don't worry about it.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, don't worry about it. What was really interesting about what you were just talking about there is that you've gone from it being something that you're practicing every day to
Mhm.
it then being a complete lifestyle whole change.
Sure.
Did that take a long time for you to be able to accept that, or did you just make a decision? Because a lot of people want to do what's good and serve others
Yeah.
and follow their, I don't want to say dreams, that's not necessarily the right word, but follow where their heart and instinct wants to take, but fear gets in the way.
Mhm.
How did you manage to make that switch?
Gradually, in one
Okay.
word.
Interesting.
But
Okay.
since this is a podcast, you probably want more than one word. Uh,
But gradually is truthful though.
yeah, it's very truthful. I
Yeah.
have seen people who, well, it depends on the person and on their personality and on their background and perhaps on support systems they have. But I find that if people pick up an entirely new lifestyle very quickly and say, I'm going to do it exactly like this forever, it doesn't work very well. For a while, yes, but then the old ways of doing things, their old habits, their friends, their family, just who they are, kicks in at a certain point. And if they've really quickly taken up that brand new lifestyle, whether in meditation or something else, then they can probably really quickly leave it. I know a
Right.
tall tree and a strong tree has deep roots, so to speak, you know. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, so for me, it was gradual. I started the meditation with no other changes in my life except twice a day I did my meditation. Went by myself to my room, um, or if I'm in a park or a library, whatever, I find a quiet place and I do my meditation. And then gradually I started realizing, yes, there are other things that can help my meditation to be better. And so I would change my diet to become vegetarian, for example. And I would start to join other people in a weekly meditation group, things like that. Read books about meditation rather than just whatever else I was reading. And in these ways, gradually my mind changed, my life changed, but gradually. Um, in fact, what I've learned from at least one of our senior teachers used to say that if you want to know if you're making progress in meditation, whatever that means, uh, uh, look at yourself now, and then 6 months later, look at yourself, so to speak, and then you can maybe see changes. But if you look every day, oh, am I doing better in my meditation? Am I more calm? And I'm more clear thinking? And
Mm.
am I more cheerful? If you try to do that day by day, you really won't see the difference, you know.
I
And
think that's a really important point because I think a lot of people, me included,
mm,
we self-judge.
mm,
And my mum said from a little child, if I after a week of school I couldn't read completely, or write, I think it was writing actually. She said I was really annoyed at myself that
mm,
I hadn't learned to
yeah,
entirely write, you know.
yeah,
And I think something came out in your book that I read right at the beginning, and I keep going back to it. It was around to get there, you said you needed determination and patience, and
mm,
I think, would I be right in saying that that determination and patience needs to be with self?
with self.
Yeah.
Well,
The determination and the patience for self
y-
needs to be there to be able to gradually make the changes.
yeah, that's true. It needs to be inside yourself, but
Mm.
most of us don't have a lot of it. Well, some people do from
Yeah.
the beginning, not related to meditation, but just the way they are. I'm going to do it, and they do it, or they do the best they can in that thing. Um, but not all of us have it, no. And with meditation, it becomes more difficult because it's, for most of us, uh, it's not the thing that we're brought up with. Now, someone might be saying, I'm going to be determined to get on the sports team at school, football, cricket, baseball, et cetera, et cetera. And they'll have support more or less from their family, from their friends, and all. And so they can do it. Or someone might say, I'm determined to uh, get my house painted in the weekend. Okay, that's something measurable, something not
Mm.
outside of the norms. Um, but with meditation, it's just not in the norm for most of us. So it becomes difficult, and one may also ask themselves, "How do I know if I'm making the progress?" You know, kind of like what I just said,
Mm.
and talking to other people, talking to a teacher to get feedback, and also having some sort of uh, sense of what you do want to measure or what you do want to look at to know if you've made that progress. Yeah.
I do like the idea of not doing it every day. I think that giving yourself a decent amount of
Mhm.
time to have made the adjustment, I think, is a quite a practical piece of advice, really, because
Yeah.
I do think that people we live in a world where it's like everything's fast and quick, and I think when you give yourself decent amount of time to look
Yeah.
back and not measure's the right word, I guess, but compare, I don't really like it, but it is kind of comparing how far you've gone. I think that's really important. So you've you've been doing this a long time. You've practiced in many
Mhm.
countries.
Mhm.
As a result of that, you would have influenced or impacted a lot of people with this kind of non-conforming approach. Do you consider the way you went about it um, a sort of non-conformity as a superpower, for
Yeah.
want of a word?
You had mentioned that before about nonconformity. Is it you would ask me, or one of the questions you commonly ask, I guess, is, uh, as I'd gotten from you, is do you consider nonconformity a superpower? Um, Now, in superpower, um, people people often think of superpower in the political sense. The USA
Mm.
is a superpower, USSR, China, these are
I was thinking
superpowers.
more Superman, but
Yeah. But but if we think of now in that way, of course, meditation doesn't. If everyone in your country did meditation, still that country may not become a superpower, whatever that means. But another way we look at superpower, like you just mentioned, Superman. Superman. Now, what were his? I read all the Superman books,
oh,
comic books when I was young,
love
plus
Superman.
Batman and so many others. Um, if I can remember, Superman's superpowers would have included X-ray vision.
Mm.
I think he could read other people's thoughts. Of course, he could fly. He was very, very strong, and probably other superpowers I'm not thinking of. Someone else in the comic book world would have had the superpower of fast speed or uh, other things. Again, I'm not thinking about it right now. But no, meditation won't give you those superpowers unless I've missed something. Um, uh, and if you're looking for those type of things in meditation, you'll probably leave it pretty quickly. So, uh, does meditation give you superpowers? That's more or less what you were asking. Uh,
Or the sort
or
of
no, you said
non-conformist
do you
approach.
consider nonconformity a superpower? Is that what you're
Mm.
saying?
Yeah, something
Yeah.
special.
Well, nonconformity comes in many shapes, sizes, colors, shall we say. Um, and I think if you can, as I've kind of said, use your nonconformity for the benefit of yourself, your family, the world, then in a way it's a superpower because you've actually done something useful with it,
Mm.
but
Yeah.
not nonconformity in the Superman sense, as we're saying. Um, it is a special ability, I would say, depending on what your superpower is and how you use it. Now, uh, looking at it from one particular angle, um, if your superpower, if your if your nonconformist power is, for example, that you're very dexterous, say you have the ability of sleight of hand, I would say it's great if you use it to become maybe a juggler to entertain people or a surgeon. That's great. But if you use it to be a pickpocket, nah, I wouldn't say it's very good. Some people are very sensitive to other people's thoughts. Now, if they use that to become a psychologist uh, and to support people in that way, that's great. But you might use it as to be a con artist because you can figure out how to cheat people because you know what their mental weaknesses are or their mental attractions. Again, that's not a good thing. Um, so, is nonconformity a superpower? If you use it in a decent way, I would say it is. Now, of course, some people different than me, they may say, so what? You use your sleight of hand to pickpocket. Well, okay, who knows? You need the money, so why not get it that way? Of
Mm.
course, I wouldn't agree with that, but
No, me
some
neither.
people might say it's okay. But of course, obviously, as I'm saying, I would say no, it's not okay to do it to use your nonconformist ability in a bad way. So no, it's not. But is nonconformity a superpower? In a way, it is, because most people don't use their nonconformity in that way. Now, theoretically, maybe almost everyone could be a nonconformist, in the sense that, and again, this is theoretical because I don't know, but maybe everyone does have that nonconformist special ability, but they just don't use it. Now, it could be in the arts, in the sciences, in sports, in culture, in many ways, that people do have that nonconformity. But they're just not. They don't allow themselves to do it, or they yield to those others who say, "No, no, you have to do this." There's so many stories I read about of great painters who had been trained to be lawyers or doctors. Their father or mother or their family would have said, "No, I know you can do that painting. No, no, no. You have to make a living," whatever they say. And the person, then they don't become the artist. But of course, we do know of people who do become great artists. They give up that role of being the lawyer or the doctor, whatever, which are great things to do, of course, if it's for you. And they take that risk. They take that step outside of their family, so to speak, or outside of their community, and they do become a great painter or sculptor or musician, etc.
I think you've
Yeah.
hit on a really good point around risk. In my career, I've come across many people who, to your point, have an element of nonconformity about them. Some stay where they are and stay in their lane no matter
Mhm.
what,
Mhm.
and they seem a bit miserable often because
Mhm.
of as a result of that. But then you get other people that will, for want of a word, to hell with it all, and I'm just going to follow my thing that I want to
Yeah.
follow. I'm a little bit like that. I've definitely thrown a few grenades into my life to follow
Good.
what my heart tells
Good.
me to do.
Good.
But I think there's a lot of people that fear gets in the way of that as well. And I think the risk question is a one, I guess, that keeps coming up when I talk to people about nonconformity. I was talking to a woman a couple of weeks ago at a barbecue,
Yeah.
and she aggravated me, actually. She got on my nerves, and I couldn't figure out why. It turned out, and I'm quite an empath, so I pick up on things with people. And I couldn't figure out why she was annoying me, because she was a very lovely lady, very pleasant, really.
Mhm.
And what it turned out, and maybe I was getting this feeling from her, she ended up telling me that she'd carried on following this path that was very administrative and what have you, but
Mhm.
she'd always wanted to be an actress.
Ah.
I asked her, "Why did you not?" She said, "Oh, because I think I need to stay on this plan. I've got a plan and everything." And I just like, there must have been a feeling that and after that, the empathy flipped around for me, and I felt really sorry for her, and I
Mm.
just warmed to her
Mm.
quite a lot because of that. And I think what's interesting
Mhm.
is that my body had clearly picked up her not feeling like she was following where she really wanted to go. Because
Mm.
when she talked about it, she just lit up when she talked about wanting to be an actress and so forth. And I just sat there and I was like, how many people in this world, because of what they consider risk
Mhm.
or it's too risky, don't go down the path that they really should be going on?
A lot.
Sorry, that was a slightly rhetorical question, but
No,
it
but
makes wonder.
yeah, I was indicating that earlier, and who knows? I think a lot of people don't do it because
Mm,
of either risk or, if not risk, it's not only because of they don't want to take the risk, but maybe there's just too much pressure from family, from community. And what if you're, maybe you have a great ability to, uh, what would be an unusual, a nonconformist ability? Well, being a great painter, that's unusual. A great dancer, a tightrope walker, let's say.
oh,
I think of that. I don't know why, but let's say you have that amazing ability of dealing with heights, with dealing with balance, which few people do, and you want to do it, but maybe you're from a poor family and you have to make a living to support the family. You're probably not going to easily make a living as a tightrope artist. Some people do, but in the circus, whatever, but not too many people. I saw a guy on the South Bank years ago. I was walking along the South Bank as I often do, and I heard some nice music coming along from the distance. As I walked in, I came closer, and there was a fellow standing on a rope tied between two trees on one foot, playing saxophone or flute, whatever, I can't remember. Wow, very few people can do that. He had a cup out or whatever, so I guess he made a little money. But if he had come, as I say, there are people who they just don't have that opportunity,
Mm.
because you just have to deal with the reality that comes your way. Uh, and that's
Yeah.
sad. And that's one reason why I want to make the world a better place, so that everyone can do the best they can, the most rewarding thing they can do. Yeah.
I think that's a beautiful um, path to be following, which brings me on to the next question, perfectly timed actually, about
Mm.
you talked about opportunity. So what do you think the future is for nonconformists, bearing in mind that we seem to be living in a world at the moment, if you don't toe the line, you can get into some awful trouble,
Mhm.
especially in
Mhm.
places like America, or places like the Middle East and lots of
Yeah.
different countries, but surprisingly America at the moment. What do you think, considering that the people that have changed the world, like the Martin Luther Kings
Mhm.
and the Gaudis and all the different people in the world that have kind of made an impact on the world,
Yeah.
they were nonconformists as far as I'm concerned.
Mhm.
What do you think the future is for nonconformists?
Um, you know, maybe we've said this earlier, or maybe I've said it, but nonconformity is not something so definite like being a doctor, being a taxi driver,
Indeed,
uh,
indeed.
being a mother or father or a child. um, it's not so definite. So the future, I think, for every good thing in the world, the future is bright. Something I've learned from my spiritual teacher, Anandamurti. He's always often said the future is bright. Maybe not tomorrow, literally, but as the future goes on. But it does depend a lot on where they are. If I'm a nonconformist in a totalitarian or authoritarian country, my future as a nonconformist may not be so bright immediately, uh, unless that uh, uh, unless the powers that be can find a way to use my nonconformity. I guess maybe a nonconformist might be someone who has a photographic memory. That's pretty unusual. And if
Mhm.
she or he can use that in a good way, that's great. But in that authoritarian country, it may be acceptable to use your nonconformity for the country, for the
Well,
government. But then it probably wouldn't be a nonconformity; it would be molded and pushed and
mm,
shaped in such a way that you may have, as I said, maybe you have a photographic memory, and that can be used by the government in whatever way. But the rest of your life would have to be to the straight and narrow. So in those places, nonconformity would not be the future of a nonconformist would not be very bright in certain types of governments or countries.
yeah.
But I do think that the world is, use a very vague or general term, opening up. I think there's more opportunities for people to do all sorts of things uh, uh, that were never allowed or never possible before.
Mm,
Uh, for example, you have the capability not only for photography, which I know, for podcasting, and for many other things which I may not know. Uh, but 50 years ago, before there was this openness, you would have had to be a journalist with a conventional newspaper or magazine or TV station or radio station to do what you're doing. So podcasting now, which many people can do very nicely, they can open up the world to many ideas through their podcasts. 50 years ago, it may not have been possible for many people who now do it. Um,
I think you're right. I think the possibility, and we talked about this right at the beginning
yeah.
actually, what you caught on to was right at the beginning about the yoga um, practice, was the possibility of it. And I
Hmm.
think you're right. I think we are living in a time where, yeah, there's some not so great things happening, but
Hmm.
also, to your point, there's a huge amount opened up, not just not just for the average person, but for women and
Hmm.
minorities and
Hmm.
different orientations the diverse world that we now are able to live in, that pretty much
Hmm.
everybody within reason,
Hmm.
I'll say within reason, has a reasonable chance of being able to do lots of things. I like that. I like the potential and the possibility. I think that's
Yeah.
quite exciting.
Well, yeah, and see, as you're talking, a couple thoughts come to my mind. The second one I'll say first is about for many people, uh, yeah, they want the opportunity to express themselves, to be able to do something, but they are maybe from a very poor area. One thing I do periodically is well, Ananda Marga, our meditation group, works all over the world, often doing social service rather than meditation teaching. And one of my colleagues is a woman, one of our women teachers, works in Nairobi. She has a school there in what I'm told is like just about the poorest area of Nairobi. So periodically, I raise money for her so that some of her students every year who pass exams for the higher levels of school can pay the tuition fees because the family, they're good students, but they come from extremely poor families, let alone thinking of expressing your nonconformity. To get them an education is what they need. And when I raise not a lot of money by our standards, but when I raise the money 2 or 3 times a year that she needs for her students, it's the best feeling I have because I'm helping indirectly or directly, I'm helping some students, mainly girl students, to be able to get an education. Now, through their education, they may not go on to be jugglers or classical musicians, whatever, but they'll probably be able to live a decent life. And this, again, this is off the subject perhaps, but I feel that if as we educate more women in Africa, particularly, or other poor areas, I'm doing more to change the world than anything else I do
Yeah.
by helping kids to get an education that they otherwise wouldn't get. But about nonconformity, um, I was recalling earlier as I was reading your questions about a film I saw a long time ago called The Graduate. I don't know if
Oh,
you're,
yes.
yeah, I
Yep.
don't know if people nowadays know that, but starring Dustin Hoffman, his character I think was named Benjamin. He had just graduated from university, and he was in the beginning scene, in the opening scene, he was at a party, and a friend of his father, obviously dressed nicely, obviously a well-to-do man, uh, his father's friend came up to him and said, he didn't say, "Hello, Benjamin, how are you doing?" But he said, "Plastics." And I think that word is the most significant word in the whole film, if not in most of movies ever made, because his father's friend was saying, basically, if you invest your money in plastics, that's the up and coming business and you'll get rich. But Benjamin, he didn't want that. Now,
Mm,
Benjamin didn't, in the film, Benjamin's ideas were not uh, to become a hippie or a great painter or musician, whatever, but just to do what he could do what he wanted to do, which in his situation was nonconformist. To
yeah.
do what you want to do, in and let alone what it is, but to do what you want to do is nonconformity in many situations. Yeah,
Yeah. I
yeah,
agree. And you're going against the grain, I guess, isn't it? Whatever the grain is in your life.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
So it brings us on to the very last
Oh,
question that
okay.
I always like to ask.
Yeah,
And I'm really going to be really interested in what you're going to answer in this, bearing in mind that we've had this discussion around what is nonconformity,
yeah.
which nonconformists, if you were to pick one, do you admire and why? Do you see anybody in around that you
Oh,
think
well, I thought I had interpreted the question as being various people, but
it's fine? Various is
for
okay.
one, as a spiritual teacher, as a meditation teacher, the one that stands out most, who I mentioned in the last chapter of my book, is my spiritual teacher, my spiritual guide, who came from India, where meditation is common, yoga is common, but he took it in a very different direction, breaking almost completely away from the Hindu doctrines. Um, for example, paying for meditation. We can never take even a penny for teaching meditation. And for example, his philosophy, which is quite extensive, breaks a lot of the dogmas of Hinduism and probably Buddhism also, and Christianity, etc. And he had a lot of suffering, a lot of troubles for this in his life. I won't go into details. So he's my main example of a nonconformist.
I
He had
love
a
that
normal job.
question.
He had a normal job. He was an accountant,
Oh,
pretty
wow.
normal. But what
Yeah.
he did with his life was not just, oh, I'm an accountant, I can support my family. That's all I need, and I'll do a little meditation on the side. Not like that, but he had to have a job. People do, uh, but he used his inner qualities, his inner gifts, shall we say, to help others and to try to break the mold of dogmas that he lived with his whole life, that he saw all around him. Yeah, but
That's
there
quite
there are
extraordinary.
many others who are more famous, maybe less accomplished. When I was looking at that question, I thought of Malcolm X, the American Black
Oh,
revolutionary,
yeah.
who he was in early days. He was in jail as a criminal, just a common criminal, and he could have lived his whole life that way. But he had the determination to get an education and to help his people, so to speak, um, to break their bondages. Um, Last year, I think it was, I read a book which seems like it deals with normal people, called Eminent Victorians by an English writer named Lytton Strachey. And there
Oh,
were four people, and three of them were pretty normal, an educator, etc. But Florence Nightingale was one of his eminent Victorians. And Florence Nightingale was incredible from what I could see. Of course, I know there's good and bad points about everyone, but she broke a lot of the dogmas about nursing, about women's roles in the world. And I was thoroughly impressed by what she did. Not that she was perfect, but she wanted, again, she wanted to help people. So she's another person who I think was well, not I think, but she was a nonconformist who, in that way, I admired her a lot. Yeah. And there are many others. Yeah. Uh, the book I'm looking to get published now is deals with a friend of mine, a woman I met on a train platform, oddly enough, who was a teacher, a head teacher in a school in England, in near London. Pretty normal occupation, being a head teacher, but she decided to do other things. Like, she became the sixth woman to ski solo across Antarctica, uh,
oh,
and that's pretty nonconformist.
it is.
uh, and she was on her way to kayaking. She was kayaking down the Amazon River also, which is pretty nonconformist.
It's an extreme, isn't it?
Well, it's extreme nonconformism. Yeah,
Hot to
yeah,
cold.
yeah.
Yeah.
So,
The world is full of them.
yeah, the world is full of them, and as we're saying, many people don't have a chance to express it, and even other people. There's many people who do admirable things, noble things in life, but we never hear about it.
That is true.
Yeah, and that's partly what your program is about, is helping us to hear about
Yeah,
these unusual and admirable people who we normally don't hear about. Yeah.
very much so. I mean, the whole point is celebrating
Hmm.
their non-conformity in whatever form it's taking.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah.
Well, look, is there anything else you wanted to talk about today? Because we're kind of nearing the end of our
Um,
chat. Is there anything
well,
we didn't cover off that you wanted to talk about?
okay. Well, in relation to nonconformity or breaking
Yes.
the status quo, as we're saying, as I think we both understand, it's not easy for everyone. No matter what great abilities you have, there may be things about life that inhibit you from expressing or using your great abilities. Um, it could be, yeah, in science, art, spirituality, sports, in many, many ways. We have these abilities, but we can't always use them. So if we can encourage others, support others in doing the best they can in their life, that's great. Years ago, one of my senior colleagues, he passed away some years ago. Someone asked him why he decided to become a meditation or a yogic monk. And he said, very simply said, I want to help make the world a better place. And
That is a
I hope that's what we all want to do, is to help make the world a better place in whatever way we can. Yeah.
I think that is a perfect line to finish our recording and our podcast. Let's all try and leave the world in a better place than how we
Yeah.
found it.
Yeah. And let's try to think, let's see if we can do a little bit of that every day of our life. Don't get worried if you don't,
Yeah,
but just have that in your heart, you, me, and anyone listening to this. see what you can do. Even talking to someone who's lonely, that's
Mm.
helping the world. Yeah.
I love that. It's sometimes those micro things that make all the difference in a person's life, isn't it?
Yeah.
Well, look, thank you so much for your time today. It's been an absolute pleasure. It was as interesting as I thought it was going to be. And
Yeah.
carry on continuing to do all the good that you're doing in the world because you're clearly helping others, which I
And you,
think is
Lena,
beautiful.
you also.
Thank
Yeah.
you very much.
Yeah.
Well, look, thank you everybody for listening.
Yeah.
Thank you, Dada, for being on the show. And
Mhm.
we'll see you all next time. See you
Okay.
later.
Thank you.